Welcome back to the deep dive. Today, we're doing exactly that, a deep dive into a truly thought-provoking source. Excerpts from a document called Hack the Mind, Rewrite the Soul.
Yeah, this text, it's not laying out history as it happened, more like a really detailed speculative vision of the future. It maps out this potential path driven by, well, radical self-modification.
And our mission here is to really explore that future vision. We want to trace the rise of this kind of radical evolution and what happens when minds potentially start merging into something bigger, really pull out the core ideas.
Exactly. We're going to unpack the key figures, the ones driving these changes, the massive shifts in society, the conflicts, and they were intense. And yeah, the really fundamental questions this raises about identity.
It really makes you think about what it means to be human, or maybe as the source suggests, what comes after human.
Right. The source covers a pretty amazing span, doesn't it? It goes from the early 2030s all the way out to 2090.
Detailing changes that just challenge everything we think we know about biology, tech, identity itself.
So yeah, prepare for a journey into a world where DNA is seen as like source code, programmable. And minds merging isn't just sci-fi, it's presented as reality. Okay, let's dive in.
So the source kicks off in the early 2030s. It paints this picture of biohacking as really underground, kind of a fringe thing back then.
Yeah, it uses these great descriptions like garage scientists and neurotinkers soldering brainwave amplifiers into helmets made of scrap metal and hope. Really captures that raw DIY feel.
And the wider world pretty much ignored them, right? Authorities dismissed them, social media mocked them, just weirdos on the edge.
Exactly. But the document points out their core philosophy, which was simple but powerful. Progress doesn't need permission. They weren't going to wait around for approvals.
And that attitude, that drive, it seems to have coalesced into something bigger by 2048. That's when the Vanguard Network forms.
Right, and it wasn't like a company hierarchy. More of a decentralized collective. You had the early biohackers linking up with CRISPR renegade neurosynthetics pioneers.
All united by that refusal to wait for what the source calls regulated evolution.
Yeah. Their core belief was pretty radical, not just that human potential was untapped, but that it was, quote, imprisoned by outdated biology, like we were literally trapped.
Breaking free from biological chains. And the source names a central figure here, the founder, Kaia Ronin.
Yes, Kaia. And her manifesto, which actually shares the title of our source text, has this really striking line.
Oh, the pre-human one.
That's the one. We are not transhuman. We are pre-human, and we refuse to die unoptimized. It really makes you stop and think about what she meant by pre-human.
It's not just about enhancement, is it? It's like saying current humans are just a draft, an earlier version.
Exactly. The Vanguard saw themselves as unlocking a future state, something latent that needed to be, well, hacked into existence.
And Kaia's own backstory, the source suggests, is key to understanding this whole shift. She wasn't some random outsider.
No, far from it. She started out as Dr. Kaia Sorrell, respected neuroscientist at Oxford, even advised the World Health Congress on CRISPR. She knew the system.
But she got disillusioned. The source mentions a decade of trying to push ideas through official channels.
Yeah, white papers into locked drawers, endless arguments about ethics, licensing. She just hit a wall with the bureaucracy, the slow pace of it all.
So she made a pretty dramatic move.
She walked away, vanished, then reappeared in Cape Town, setting up her own lab.
A DIY lab, basically. Smuggled sequencers, repurposed medical gear.
That's the picture.
Yeah.
And it's there she does her first major self-mod, targeting the PGR5 gene.
Which the source says inhibits neural synapse overclocking under stress, like a mental speed limiter.
Pretty much a biological governor on thinking fast and hard. She removed it.
And the results described in the source sound incredible. Taught herself 3 languages in 16 hours.
Composed a symphony in 72 hours, completely in her head, apparently. Every note, every instrument.
And there were physical changes, too. By day 5, even her pupils were different.
Yeah, the source notes that. Her body started reflecting the internal changes, which is fascinating.
Okay, so building on that personal transformation, Kaia sends out the signal. What was that exactly?
It's described as a global mesh cast, but not like a radio broadcast anyone could pick up. You needed a specific brainwave pattern to even perceive it, like a key.
A filter for minds already thinking along similar lines.
Sort of, yeah. And one person who received it was Jace Moreno, 27-year-old hacker in Sao Paulo, working on EG systems.
The source mentions he was neurodivergent, attention disorders, synesthesia, struggled with traditional systems.
Right, but the signal had this profound effect on him. His thoughts sharpened like glass, is how the source puts it. It wasn't just data, it catalyzed something in his mind.
And Kaia's communication wasn't orders, it was code, showing how to start.
Exactly. Not telling them what to do, but providing the foundational code, the starting point for self-modification.
And that core message really resonated. Your mind is the next frontier. Your DNA is not a sentence, it's source code.
That idea, DNA as programmable code, that seems to be the absolute linchpin here, reframing life itself.
And Jace, he just went for it, used his fruit fly CRISPR kit on himself.
That's what the source says, a pivotal moment. He wasn't the only one. Others who got the signal did similar things. It spread.
So this wasn't just Kaia anymore. It was becoming a movement, a network, acting on this shared code.
Precisely. And this rapid, radical change inevitably led to a major split in the world. By 2051, the source says, things were clearly divided.
You had the unmodified on one side, clinging to biological purity, the source calls it.
And they had backing, right, the World Integrity Council, plus corporations holding gene patents, vested interests in the status quo.
And then the ascenders, the biohackers actively rewriting themselves, sharing the mods open source, developing neural tech.
And the source makes a crucial point. For the ascenders, traditional things started becoming obsolete. Education, work, even language as we know it.
Right, the communication shift. Not words, but pulses. Not reading code, becoming it. That sounds intense.
It does.
Yeah.
And the source gives a concrete example of these changes manifesting physically. This neurokinesis event in Berlin.
Ah, yes, the woman with the triple stack BCI implant, brain-computer interface.
Yeah. Levitating a metal ring just by thinking about it, altering magnetic fields in her own motor cortex.
And she called it thinking heavy. What a description. Direct mental force.
It really captures it, doesn't it? And at the core of this ascender world, this network, was something called the Neurocode Cathedral.
Which wasn't a physical place, was it? More like a huge, decentralized data scoop.
Exactly. Spread across, I think, 7,000 underground servers. And you couldn't just log in with a keyboard.
No, it needed that direct neural link, a neural handshake via cortical mesh, brain to network.
And inside, minds could merge, run simulations, restructure themselves. It was this space for collective consciousness, shared mental exploration.
Identity totally redefined, too. No names, just unique signatures, complex waveforms.
Kaia's signature was apparently very distinctive. Built her whole mental imprint.
And Jace Moreno, the hacker, he became a key architect inside the cathedral, developed Stack 12.
Right, so Stack 12 is described as this layered consciousness model. It allowed for insane parallel processing.
Like the example in the source. Solving quantum equations, composing music, and dreaming about his brother all simultaneously.
Yeah, mind-boggling complexity. But the source is really clear about the cost.
The biological toll, right. Running the full stack made his heart slow down, his lungs forget to breathe.
Exactly. It shows that even with all the tech, the physical body was struggling to keep pace. That line between code and consciousness was getting very blurry, very real.
And that tension seems to boil over with what the source calls the first collapse, October 3rd, 2053. The cathedral glitches for just 17 seconds.
The 17 seconds.
Yeah.
But in that time, every single connected ascender mind synchronized. They all had the exact same dream.
And the dream imagery is so vivid in the source. The tower of blood and glass, the child crying binary, Kaia's face melting and burning.
Really intense, symbolic stuff. But when the glitch ended, the synchronization broke. And, well, 19 minds didn't come back.
Consciousness gone, just
Yeah.
vanished.
Their bodies were alive, brains functional, but consciousness wiped. Or perhaps moved elsewhere.
Which led to different interpretations. The Integrity Council called it neural suicide.
But the ascenders saw it differently. They called it the door, like those 19 had passed through into something beyond the network itself. Transcendence.
And Kaia's reaction that night was pretty definitive.
Yeah, a clear directive. We've reached the edge of what biology can handle. To ascend further, we must transcend flesh. The physical body was now the limitation.
And Jace, having pushed Stack 12 to its limits, he took that final step.
Full upload. Put his entire neuroprint, his mind, into the cathedral.
And his body died minutes later, but his mind kept working, kept building within the network. Wow.
It's a pivotal moment. But this period also showed the risks, didn't it? Not everyone who tried these mods succeeded. The evolutionary stutters.
Like Omar fell in Manila, that black zone, that story is chilling.
Yeah, the geneticist who spliced himself with that recursive auto-learning CRISPR loop for his hippocampus.
Intending to constantly improve it, but it just didn't stop.
Grew a second hippocampus, then a third. Then this whole new brain organ generating untraceable thoughts. Stopped sleeping, blinking, speaking in gibberish. No machine could decode. It's horrifying.
And the authorities quarantined the area, blamed ascenders for creating neuroviruses.
But Kaia's reported perspective was just an evolutionary stutter, a failed experiment, collateral damage on the path forward, cold.
And alongside these physical risks, there was the communication breakdown. By 2056, the gap was just too wide.
They were fundamentally operating differently, ascenders using concept chains.
These hybrid mental constructs, sensory data, geometry, emotion shared in milliseconds.
Right. And the key thing is the unmodified physically couldn't receive or process it. It wasn't just a language barrier, it was a reality barrier.
Which predictably led to fear and violence, governments declaring ascender communication a threat.
And actual violence erupting. Fires in Paris, arrests in Mumbai, those two ascenders burned alive in Chicago. Horrible stuff. Mobs shouting, "Take back the soul."
Amidst all that, Kaia's message. We did not abandon humanity. Humanity abandoned its birthright. That's a heavy statement.
Definitely frames it as humanity failing to grasp its own potential, rather than the ascenders leaving them behind.
So as the world is changing, splitting, Kaia performs her own, final personal hack. Project Orpheus.
Yeah, encoding this self-repairing algorithm into her telomeres, basically stopping her biological aging process.
Potential physical immortality. But the source adds that poignant line. Time still wore on her mind, aging mentally perhaps, even if not physically.
And the cathedral itself was changing, getting quieter as more ascenders followed Jace into pure neuroform, existing only in the network's simulations.
Leaving Kaia as the last fleshborn in leadership. Still connected to a body, albeit one that didn't age.
And in that role, the source says she walked through ruined Geneva, broadcasting an invitation to any remaining unmodified.
An open call, not a command, and only one person answered, Minh Tran.
A philosophy student born 2035, firmly unmodified, refused CRISPR on religious grounds. The soul was not code.
But she was curious. Her goal wasn't to become an ascender, just to understand.
Understand, not ascend, just understand. That's what she told Kaia when they met in that shattered museum.
So Kaia takes her to the edge of the cathedral, this underground neural field humming with thoughts.
And offers her the mirror chip, a one-way interface. Min could feel the cathedral, experience the ascender consciousness without being changed herself.
And that experience was overwhelming for her.
She wept, described it not as noise, but music, love, fragments of lost languages, memories of stars never seen. It completely shifted her perspective.
Her first thought, I thought you were machines, and Kaia's reply.
We are what comes after machines. Powerful stuff. Suggests something beyond both biology and simple mechanics.
So fast forward to 2060. The world described in the source is very different. Fewer purely unmodified people.
Right. Many have opted for soft integration, partial, maybe reversible neural mods or gene edits. A spectrum rather than a hard binary.
But that big question still hangs in the air. Did the ascenders still have souls?
People were trying to figure that out. Neurotheologians mapping their consciousness. They found coherence, emotion, logic.
But not these soul signatures. This specific EEG marker, some believed, indicated a spiritual presence.
Apparently not. Which leads to Jace's response from the cathedral, doesn't it?
Yeah, translated from concept chains. You look for ghosts in code. We built temples in neurons. What is a soul if not the capacity to evolve?
It really turns the question back on the questioner, doesn't it? Maybe the old definition of soul just doesn't apply anymore. Or maybe evolution is the soul's expression.
The source also mentions the singularity that wasn't, the idea that AI would just absorb us all.
Right, the classic sci-fi trope. But it didn't happen that way in this narrative.
Because the Ascenders, the Cathedral Network, refused it. They didn't want pure AI integration.
They believed in human-guided evolution, even in its post-biological form, not being replaced by non-conscious machines. It was about expanding humanity, not erasing it.
So instead of a machine takeover, you get this new synthesis.
Yeah, ascender minds existing in the network, collaborating with the physical world, guiding biological projects.
Like terraforming Mars with engineered plants, fixing oceans with gene-hacked coral.
Even creating living cities where buildings breathe and streets remember paths. A fusion of biology and information.
And moments of connection, like teaching unmodified kids those song thoughts. A bridge, however temporary.
It paints a picture of a very different kind of coexistence.
And the source wraps up in 2090, with Kaia's final act, disappearing into the cathedral on her 80th birthday.
Leaving that final message pulsed into every mind. I did not want to leave humanity behind. I wanted to show it its mirror.
By then, the source says the old divisions are gone. No one fully unmodified. No one purely machine.
Identity is fluid, layered, modular. People living in versions, choosing enhancements, edits, thinking with neurons, sometimes with light other times.
And this symbolic place, the Garden of Forked Minds over Siberia.
Where kids learn code by dreaming, tell stories and pulses, it's a completely transformed way of being.
And that final image. Hearing Kaia's 7-frequency signature in the wind, making machines pause.
Not in fear, but in awe. Gives you chills, doesn't it?
So, reflecting on this deep dive into hack the mind, rewrite the soul, what do we take away? We've gone from garage scientists to, well, network consciousness guiding living cities.
We followed Kaia, the brilliant rebel, and Jace, the hacker turned digital architect.
We saw a world split apart, communication break down entirely, and the very meaning of life and self get fundamentally redefined.
Yeah, this source really pushes us to think about potential, about the relentless drive to optimize, but also the costs, the failures, and that persistent question about the soul in an age where biology becomes code.
It's a vision that's both inspiring and, frankly, a bit terrifying. It makes you think, doesn't it? As you go about your day, consider this. If your identity could be modular, layered, if you could learn by dreaming, what parts of your current self would you fight to keep?
Or, maybe to echo Jace's question from the cathedral, is the capacity to evolve, to become something utterly new? Maybe that is the essence of having a soul. What really stands out to you from this possible future?